Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to the Winter Spectacular as we go through the best of 2020. 2020, in my opinion, was a great year for board games. But this particular list is going to be slightly different than I've done in years past. In years past, all three of us, me, Sam, and Z, we would do our top 10 experiences of the year together. Well, this year was different. Many of our experiences often come from conventions or hanging out playing games with the gang, and a lot of that didn't happen this year. But I did have, more than 10 great experiences this year. And so I wanted to talk about those experiences, and I think we can look back at this year and find joy in it in different ways, and so these are mine. Number 10 for me was a game of Tammany Hall. Now, this was at a small event that I had where a few really close friends got together and we played some games. And one of the games that we played was Tammany Hall. It was a 5-player game, and it was so intense, but yet at the same time so lighthearted. Everybody was attacking everybody who was doing this and stabbing here and doing that. It was very entertaining. I really had a great time. It's one of those games that just was memorable to me in just, I don't know what it is. It was a really entertaining time. So Tammany Hall. Number 9 was Nemesis via Tabletop Simulator. This is one that you can watch live. We played this one live. Now, Nemesis is a fairly complex game. Tabletop Simulator, I'll just be clear, I hate playing games on it. I just do. It's so much work, and I feel like to turn sideways, I have to go, when I'm playing a board game, I can just look to the side to see what's going on. To play when on Tabletop Simulator, I'm like, here, I need the card. Now, I'm sure that goes away when you get better at it, but this particular game, and again, we played this one live of the new, for the preview of the new Nemesis, we were taught by the owner of Awakened Realms. He walked us through the game, and it was a blast. It was a great story. We didn't know what was going to happen at any given point. And while Nemesis is not one of my favorite games, I think it's decent, not great, not bad, but decent. But this game was phenomenally fun. It felt like a story. It felt like we were going through and the queen attacking us and all kinds of things. It was just a neat game and one that I remember. Number 8 is Twilight Imperium 4th edition. So this was Twilight Imperium is not a game I get to the table very often. In this circumstance, we did get Twilight Imperium to the table, and in fact, either we posted it already or we'll post like a session report about it. We want to play with a new expansion. And it was about time. I don't know how many more times in my life I'm going to play Twilight Imperium 4th edition. I just don't know how many times I have to play an 8-hour game. Yes, I know for you it's only 4, but for me it always ends up being a long game. And yet still, it was me and Roy and Mike and Stephen Bonacor, and we all had a good time. Everyone was going after each other. Everyone was attacking everybody. It was an intrigue and a good time between friends who can do that with each other and not worry about the consequences. And it was a long gaming session. Didn't feel incredibly long, although you looked at watch and like, oh my. But I just had a blast doing it. So Twilight Imperium 4th edition with the latest expansion. Number 7 is Pandemic Legacy Season 0. Now, this one in particular, we did not record. I recorded Season 1 and Season 2, I think. We recorded those and we posted them. But recently, we found that we enjoy legacy games more when we don't play them live because we often have to stop and pause, maybe look up a rule, and that doesn't look as good live if possible. And it just gave us some freedom, so we played it without cameras this year, and I apologize. I know viewers might have wanted to see it. But not only was Pandemic Legacy Season 0 a great game, it was just a great experience. It was a little weird, right? We're playing Pandemic Legacy Season 0 in the middle of an actual pandemic. Now, that's not the focal point of this particular game. You'll see when you play it. There's still pandemic in it, but it's not as focal as it was in Seasons 1 and 2. But it's still, there's something about a legacy game where I played this with Roy, Mike, and Z, and we played through the whole thing. We, for once, did not rush through a legacy game. We played 2 games a week, I think, for, I don't know, 6, 7 weeks or whatever. And it felt relaxed. It was exciting to come in like, ooh, we're going to play again. It felt like I was playing with top level. I mean, I'm playing with Z Garcia, who loves Pandemic, and Mike and Roy are both really smart. I'm like the 4th smartest person in the room for sure. And we just had a great time solving this together. My number 6 was something I never imagined I would do. That was the solo marathon. Now this, I don't know if you remember, but this was at the very beginning of lockdown. And here in Florida, they locked down lots of stuff. It was very locked down at that point in time. Everybody was inside. No one knew what to do. And I was like, we were going to do an actual marathon. We can't do a marathon. What do I do? So I just said, you know what? People have been getting on my case to play this game solo, to play this game solo. I'm just going to do a solo marathon. It goes against the grain. I'm not known for being a solo gamer, but I'm just going to play games here by myself in the studio. And it was eerie in one sense, where I was sitting here in a quiet world playing games, but lots of people live watching me, correcting all my incorrect moves. You can go back if you want to watch solo games play badly. That was it. But it was great. I met many people. A lot of you watched along with me. And yes, it was solo, but it was solo with the world, and it was neat. It was exciting. I played games like Friday and Onirim and all these different games that had solo variants, and I was able to play them live. And it was just an interesting day as I went through all these different games and played till, I don't know, 2 in the morning or something. And it was just such a weird concept, but it was like the last vestige of that. I don't know, but it was something that was very memorable to me, the solo marathon. All right, number 5 is the Summer Spectacular. I was gutted when we had to cancel Dice Tower East. It was our first one, and there we had to cancel it because of the pandemic. Nothing we could do about it. And I said, all right, like every other convention, we want to do something. But I didn't want to make an online con because I didn't think that would work very well, or that we even knew what we were doing running an online con. But we do know how to run an online show, or at least I hope so. And in fact, Summer Spectacular is the impetus for here, the Winter Spectacular. So we put it together. We'll play some games live. We'll play some games through Zoom. We'll do a top 10 or 2. We'll do the Dice Tower Awards. And we made this whole thing. And, let's see if we can get this to work. And, and it was so much work. But we pulled it off. It worked. I mean, you may differ, but it was fun. And I have to say, I had been so enjoying our live Dice Tower Awards that we've been doing for the last years, where we had, 500 people there and some of the designers and stuff came. But when we did it online this year, it was the best one we've ever done, I think. And all the acceptance speeches, it felt classy. It was really neat. Roy worked his head off, did a great job putting so much of this together. And all the different games we played, it was an experience. Now, it was an experience that when we were done, I went home and I was like, I was so tired. But it felt like a con to some degree, but it also felt like we put on a fun show and we had a good time doing it. Number 4. Well, before everything happened, there was some conventions this year, and that's the Dice Tower Cruise. A fun cruise. It was a very stressful cruise for me because anything that could go wrong went wrong. Our library carts were destroyed practically, and we had to rebuild them. We did it just a week and a half before Dice Tower West, and but it was great. We had one of the best game shows, maybe the best game show that's ever been run. We had Dice Tower on ice. We had a ton of people. It felt like we took the ship over playing board games. And it was very entertaining in that regard. Had a lot of fun. And we didn't know at the time it was the last big hurrah almost. But that last big hurrah is saved for my number 3, which is Dice Tower West. Dice Tower West, I used, every year, the best game is a cruise and then the retreat. But you know what? This year, well, there wasn't many conventions to go up against, but Dice Tower West, it was the best of all the conventions we run out there. It was a nice de-stressor after cruise. The cruise was fun, but it was a lot of work. Dice Tower West, I had a good show with Rado. I had a good show with all the other people. We had great tables. There was this vibrance there. Now, that vibrance probably would have been tripled had we known this was the last con for most of everyone who went to it. But the Dice Tower library was there, was in full bloom, hot games, nice and relaxed. The Westgate was great. And I really remember after, on the last night, Saturday night, I was walking back to my room, and there was just jumpin' jive band playing there live. And I stood there and watched them, and I love live music, and it was entertaining. I was watching, having a good time, and people were leaving and walking by. They come up to me and say, "Tom, this was an amazing con. Thank you. We'll either see you tomorrow or we'll see you next time." And so there I was, having a good time, saying goodbye to a lot of my friends, just listening to the music, and it was like the calm before the storm, but it was amazing, and it was a great time. Number 2 is something I did not expect to be on my list at all at the beginning of the year. It never even crossed my mind to do it. Board Game Geek had to cancel Board Game Geek Spring, and we had to cancel Dice Tower East, so we went together for an online convention. We helped them out. And they came to me and said, can you run some games and things? I was like, oh, sure. What do? I'll play Terraforming Mars on the iOS. And I thought, I know what. I'll run through Zoom. This new Zoom thing I'd heard about. I'll run a game of Werewolf over it. And it went so well. First of all, I was surprised people showed up. I was like, all right, I got to be able to do this. How's it going to work through Zoom and everything? And I did it twice. And the second time, I was like, man, this was so much fun. Let's do it again. So I asked the people, I said, if I made a little Facebook group or here, and you joined it, and we could maybe do these games again in the future. And they did, and we did one next week, and then more people joined. There's now over 400 people in this group, and it is growing. It could be 500 by the time you watch this. And not only am I running a game or so every week, there's games almost every night, and it's not just Werewolf, it's Blood on the Clock Tower. But I'm telling you folks, I feel like if I run into anybody from one of my Dice Tower Werewolf games, I want to give them a big hug, because I feel like we're such good friends at this point. I see these people every week or every other week, depending if they're my game or not, or some of them I've just seen a couple times. But man, I feel like we're family. It's such a good time. And it's Werewolf. It's in a game of elimination, and some people are there. But then when it's over, everyone comes in and we talk about it and have a good time. And I'm just moderating. I'm just putting out some crazy rules and seeing what happens. And it is so fantastic. I love every minute of it. My number 1 experience of 2020, though, is not a con and has nothing to do with online. It's in my own household. So, as many of you know, 2.5 years ago, Melody, my oldest daughter, who played every game with me, went to college. Oh, well, what do? That's part of life. My second daughter went to college this year, and I was like, oh, we're going to be stuck at home with the kids. I was stuck at home for a while. Well, hey, board games. What board game should I play? And then I realized I never finished Rise of Queensdale. I didn't finish it when we played it. I was like, I think my kids could handle this, because my 4th and 5th daughters, Violet and Ruby, who will actually be doing their own top 10 later this week, they're playing all these other games, and Holly was bored, my 3rd daughter, and I was like, you know what, 4 players, let's play Rise of Queensdale. And every week we played 1 or 2 games. And it was amazing. It's a legacy game. Rise of Queensdale is fine. It's a 7 out of 10 for me. But I bet you if you ask some of my kids, it might be a 10 out of 10. That was a great experience. We played the same game with rules changes as each week went by. And I just had a great time hanging out with my kids. My kids are not necessarily gamers, although Ruby and Violet certainly play a lot of games at this point in time, to the point where they can make a top 10 of this year. But that experience was great. We also played Clank Legacy, Betrayal Legacy, and we've played tons of games throughout the year. Some were amazing, some were okay, some were bad games. But that Rise of Queensdale was like that pinnacle moment where the world had frozen and we got together and played games each week. It was wonderful. And yes, it may be, a bit sentimental here, I guess, to put gaming with my family as number 1, but I really mean it. That was my favorite gaming experience of 2020. So I was able to do that, to play games with people online, and hey, we snuck in a couple conventions at the beginning of the year. 2020 wasn't that bad for me, if you think about it in those terms. What were your favorite gaming experiences? Let me know in the comments. But until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching my top 10 experiences of 2020.